I received the termination email at 11:47 p.m. on a Wednesday, 48 hours before my bonus payment. 48 hours before 3 years of work would finally pay off. The sender was Oliver Hartwell, the founder's son who had just taken over as company president. His message had 5 lines: cold, direct, effective. I was being removed from the Ashford Industries deal immediately. My access would be revoked at midnight. The reason given was restructuring. But everyone in the London office knew the real reason. 3 days earlier, someone had seen me holding hands with my boyfriend outside a Soho pub. By Monday morning, the entire executive floor was whispering. By Tuesday, Oliver called me into his office and told me the company needed a more traditional image for international clients. On Wednesday night, I was out. £400,000 in bonuses, gone. 3 years leading the biggest contract negotiation in company history, erased. My name removed from every document as if I had never existed. I had sacrificed everything for that deal. Weekends in the office while my boyfriend waited at home. Birthdays missed. Holidays canceled. My father's 75th birthday dinner abandoned for a video call with German investors. Then one photograph, one moment of happiness captured by the wrong person, and it all crumbled. Oliver made his decision in less than 24 hours. My story will touch you. If you have ever been or felt judged just for being who you are, or know someone who went through this, you will identify and want to follow along because the ending is impactful. Subscribe to this channel and help give voice to stories that should no longer remain silent. My name is Sebastian Cole, and I was 34 years old when everything fell apart. I had been working at Hartwell Capital for 3 years. It was a private equity firm in Mayfair, one of those companies with Georgian townhouse offices and original artwork in every corridor. The kind of place where everyone wore Savile Row suits and spoke in polite, measured tones even when they were destroying your career. I started as a senior analyst. My job was finding acquisition targets and building financial models. I was good at it. Very good. Within 18 months, I was leading small deals. By year 2, I was running due diligence on medium-sized transactions. The work consumed me. 80-hour weeks were normal. 100-hour weeks happened during critical negotiation. I barely saw daylight between November and March. My colleagues were polite but distant. There was always something slightly off in how they treated me. Nothing obvious. Nothing you could report to human resources. Just small things. Being left out of lunch invitations. Conversations that stopped when I entered the break room. My ideas being credited to other people. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself I just needed to work harder. Marcus joined the firm 6 months after me. He was everything I was not. Rugby player build. Deep voice. Always talking about football and weekend trips to his family's estate in the Cotswolds. He was objectively less competent than me. His financial models had errors. His client presentations lacked depth. But everyone loved him. Partners invited him to their clubs. Senior management took him to client dinners. He was one of them. I met Daniel during a corporate event at the Tate Modern. He worked in technology consulting. We started talking about a sculpture installation and ended up chatting for 2 hours. He was kind, patient. He understood the pressure I was under. We started dating quietly. Very quietly. I never mentioned him at work. I never brought him to company events. I kept my personal life completely separate. The microaggressions were constant. Comments about my voice being too soft during presentations. Suggestions that I should be more assertive, more masculine in client meetings. One partner told me I should stop wearing pink shirts because it sent the wrong message. Another said I should take up boxing or rugby to build executive presence. I smiled, nodded, changed my shirts, tried to deepen my voice, attempted to laugh at jokes I found offensive. The Ashford Industries deal landed on my desk in January. It was massive. A German manufacturing company looking to acquire a British logistics network. £75 million transaction value. Complex regulatory issues. Multiple stakeholder group. The kind of deal that could make or break careers. The founding partner, Richard Hartwell, assigned it to me personally. He said I had the technical skills and attention to detail needed for something this complicated. I worked on nothing else for 3 months. Due diligence consumed my entire existence. I was reviewing contracts at 3 in the morning, running sensitivity analyses on weekends, building 300-page presentation decks for the investment committee. Daniel barely saw me. We had dinner together maybe twice a month. He was understanding, but I could see the strain. I kept promising it would get better after the deal closed. Marcus was assigned as my second in command. In theory, he was there to support me. In practice, he undermined me at every opportunity. He would schedule client calls without telling me. He would present my work as his own in-partner meeting. He made jokes about my attention to detail being obsessive and feminine. I reported none of it. I was afraid that complaining would make me look weak. By April, we were close to signing. The German board had approved the transaction. The British target company had agreed to terms. We just needed final regulatory clearance and approval from our investment committee. My bonus was tied to deal completion. £400,000. More money than my father made in 5 years as a teacher. It would change my life. Then Richard Hartwell had a stroke. He survived, but he could not work anymore. His son Oliver took over as president in May. Oliver was 39 years old and had spent most of his career working in the New York office. He had traditional views about everything. He made comments about political correctness ruining business. He talked about the importance of family values and British heritage. Everyone in the London office became nervous. Oliver started reviewing all major transactions personally. He wanted to meet the deal teams. He wanted to understand who was responsible for what. In June, he called me into his office. It was the original library of the townhouse with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and leather furniture that probably cost more than my annual salary. He sat behind a massive mahogany desk and looked at me like I was something unpleasant he had found on his shoe. He asked me about my background, where I went to university, what my father did, whether I played any sports. The questions felt like an interrogation. Then he asked about my personal life, whether I was married, whether I had children. I gave vague answers. I said I was focused on my career. He stared at me for a long moment and then dismissed. After that meeting, Marcus started acting differently, more confident, more aggressive. He began positioning himself as the real leader of the Ashford deal. He would introduce himself to clients as the primary contact. He started running meetings without inviting me. When I confronted him, he smiled and said he was just trying to lighten my workload. Daniel noticed I was struggling. We had dinner in early July at a small Italian restaurant near his flat in Shoreditch. I told him about Oliver, about Marcus, about feeling like I was being pushed out of my own deal. He held my hand across the table and told me I was stronger than I thought, that I had built something real, that they could not take that away from me. Someone saw us. Someone from the firm was walking past the restaurant and looked through the window at exactly the wrong moment. I did not know about it until 3 days later. By then, everyone knew. The whispers started on Monday morning. I walked into the office at 7:30 and immediately felt the change in atmosphere. People looked at me differently. Conversations stopped when I approached. My assistant avoided eye contact. Something had happened over the weekend, but nobody would tell me what. Marcus was particularly cheerful. He greeted me warmly in the corridor and asked how my weekend was. His smile was predatory. I knew then that whatever had happened, he was involved. By lunchtime, I understood. A junior analyst mentioned seeing photos. Someone had taken pictures of Daniel and me outside the Soho pub. The images were circulating on a private messaging group that half the office used. I felt sick, not because I was ashamed of being with Daniel, but because I knew what this meant for my career. Hartwell Capital was an old-fashioned firm. Traditional. Conservative. The kind of place where diversity meant hiring one woman for every 10 men. I had been careful for 3 years. I had kept my personal life completely private. And now, 2 months before the biggest deal of my career closed, someone had destroyed that privacy. Oliver called me into his office on Tuesday afternoon. He did not offer me a seat. He stood by the window overlooking Berkeley Square and spoke without looking at me. He said the firm needed to consider its image carefully. Major transactions required trust from conservative clients and investors. The Ashford Industries deal involved a family-owned German company with traditional Catholic values. They would be uncomfortable working with someone whose lifestyle might conflict with their beliefs. I asked if he was seriously suggesting my personal life affected my professional competence. He turned and looked at me with cold eyes. He said competence was not the issue. Perception was the issue. The firm had to put client relationships first. He suggested I consider stepping back from the lead role on the Ashford deal. Marcus could take over. I could transition to a supporting position. It would be better for everyone. I refused. I said I had spent 6 months building this transaction from nothing. I knew every detail, every risk, every opportunity. Marcus did not have the technical knowledge to close something this complex. Oliver's expression hardened. He said I should think carefully about my future at the firm. Then he dismissed me. I called Daniel that evening. I was shaking with rage and fear. He listened while I explained everything. Then he said something that changed my perspective. He reminded me that I had built the Ashford deal entirely. I owned every relationship, every piece of analysis, every presentation. The German clients trusted me specifically. If Oliver tried to replace me, the deal might fall apart. That was my leverage. The next morning, I received an email from the Ashford Industries chairman. He wanted to schedule a call to discuss final terms before signing. He addressed the email to me personally, not to Marcus, not to Oliver, to me. I forwarded it to Oliver with a simple note. The client had requested me specifically. Oliver did not respond for 6 hours. When he finally replied, his message was brief. He said we would discuss the matter after the deal closed. For now, I should continue leading the transaction. But his tone made it clear that nothing had changed. He was waiting for the right moment to remove me. The next 3 weeks were brutal. I worked even harder than before. I needed the deal to be perfect. I needed to prove that my personal life had no impact on my professional performance. I was in the office by 6 every morning. I left after midnight most nights. I reviewed every document 5 times. I ran every financial scenario. I prepared for every possible question. Marcus continued his campaign. He would make subtle comments in meetings about leadership and traditional values. He suggested to partners that the client might be more comfortable with a different primary contact. He volunteered to take over client dinners and calls. Oliver encouraged him. I could see the transition happening in slow motion. Daniel and I barely spoke during those weeks. He texted me every day asking if I was okay. I sent short replies. I promised we would spend time together after the deal closed. He was patient, but I could feel him pulling away. The relationship was dying because I was sacrificing everything for a career that was trying to destroy me. The investment committee meeting was scheduled for August 15th. That was when Hartwell Capital would give final approval for the transaction. After that, we just needed signatures from both sides. The deal would close by September 1st. My bonus would be paid on September 3rd. £400,000. Enough to buy a flat. Enough to feel secure. Enough to prove that 3 years of suffering had been worth it. I prepared for 2 weeks. The presentation was 150 slides. Financial models, market analysis, risk assessment, regulatory review. I knew every number, every assumption, every scenario. Marcus tried to insert himself into the presentation. Oliver insisted he should co-present. I agreed because I had no choice, but I made sure every slide clearly showed my work. The investment committee meeting lasted for hours. 12 partners sitting around a conference table asking brutal questions. I answered everything. Marcus stumbled several times. I had to correct his statements twice. By the end, the committee voted unanimously to approve the transaction. Oliver congratulated me coldly. The partners shook my hand. I had won. That evening, I met Daniel for dinner. It was the first time in 3 weeks we had spent more than an hour together. He looked tired, older somehow. We sat in a quiet restaurant in Covent Garden, and I told him everything was about to get better. The deal was approved. The bonus was coming. We could finally breathe. He smiled, but his eyes were sad. He said he hoped I was right. The celebration lasted exactly 5 days. On August 20th, I received a calendar invitation for a meeting with Oliver scheduled for Wednesday, August 28th at 9 a.m. The subject line was restructuring discussion. My bonus payment was scheduled for Friday, August 30th, 48 hours after the meeting. I knew immediately what was happening. I did not sleep the night before the meeting. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling while Daniel slept beside me. I knew Oliver was going to fire me. I knew he was going to do it before my bonus was paid. I just did not know how he would justify it. At 6 a.m., I gave up trying to sleep. I showered, dressed in my best suit, and went to the office. The morning was surreal. Everyone avoided me. My assistant would not make eye contact. Marcus was nowhere to be seen. I sat at my desk reviewing the Ashford transaction documents. Everything was in order. The German company would sign on September 4th. The British target would sign the same day. Money would transfer on September 5th. It was done. Perfect. Complete. At exactly 9 a.m., Oliver's assistant came to collect me. She walked me to his office in silence. Oliver was sitting behind his massive desk. Marcus was standing by the window. There was a woman I did not recognize sitting in one of the leather chairs. Oliver introduced her as Sarah from Human Resources. My stomach dropped. Oliver spoke for less than 5 minutes. He said the firm was restructuring its deal teams to improve efficiency and client service. My role was being eliminated. Marcus would take over as head of mergers and acquisitions. I would receive 2 weeks of severance pay. My employment would terminate immediately. I would need to return my laptop, security pass, and company phone before leaving the building today. I asked about my bonus. Oliver said that bonuses were discretionary and based on continued employment. Since I would no longer be employed when the payment date arrived, I was not eligible. I said I had spent 6 months building the Ashford deal. He said Marcus had been instrumental in the transaction and would receive the deal credit. Sarah from Human Resources slid a document across the desk. It was a separation agreement. I had 2 hours to sign it or the severance offer would be withdrawn. I asked if this was because of my personal life. Oliver's expression did not change. He said this was purely a business decision based on organizational needs. Marcus was smiling slightly. Sarah looked uncomfortable. Oliver stood up and extended his hand. The meeting was over. I was being dismissed. I walked out of his office in a daze. My assistant was boxing up my desk. Security was already disconnecting my computer. It was 9:47 a.m. on Wednesday, August 28th. 48 hours and 13 minutes before my bonus would have been paid. 3 years of work ending in less than an hour. I called Daniel from the street outside the office. He answered immediately. I told him what happened. He was silent for a long moment. Then he said he was coming to meet me. We sat in a park near Liverpool Street Station, and I cried for the first time since I was a child. He held me and did not say anything. There was nothing to say. That evening, I started receiving messages from colleagues. Most were sympathetic. A few were honest. They told me Oliver had been planning this for weeks. He wanted Marcus to lead the transaction because Marcus represented the right image. Young, masculine, traditional. Oliver had told the partners that clients would be more comfortable working with Marcus long term. My technical skills were acknowledged, but ultimately irrelevant compared to cultural fit. The separation agreement arrived by email at midnight. It included a non-compete clause preventing me from working in private equity for 2 years. It included a non-disparagement clause preventing me from discussing my employment. It included a confidentiality clause preventing me from disclosing any information about firm transactions. If I signed, I would get £20,000 in severance. If I refused, I would get nothing. I did not sleep again. I read the agreement 5 times. I reviewed every clause. I thought about my options. I had almost no savings. My rent was £3,000 per month. I needed money. But signing would mean accepting everything they had done to me. It would mean letting them erase me completely from the deal I had built. At 3 in the morning, I realized something. The Ashford Industries transaction documents had been prepared by me personally. Every contract, every agreement, every communication. My name was on everything as the primary contact. The German chairman had my direct mobile number. He emailed me personally every few days. The relationship belonged to me, not to Hartwell Capital. If I walked away, there was a risk the deal would fall apart. Daniel woke up and found me working at the kitchen table. I was reviewing files I had backed up on my personal laptop. Everything I had created for the Ashford deal. All my analysis. All my models. All my client communications. Daniel asked what I was doing. I told him I was building insurance. Thursday morning, I received an email from Marcus. He had been copied on all my client communications and was now introducing himself as the new lead on the transaction. His message to the Ashford chairman was condescending and poorly written. He made factual errors about the transaction timeline. He misspelled the name of one of the target company directors. It was embarrassing. The German chairman replied within 2 hours. His message was brief and cold. He stated that he had been working with me for 6 months and was not comfortable changing relationship managers 4 days before signing. He requested a call with me to discuss the transition. He copied Oliver on the email. I felt a flash of satisfaction. Then Oliver replied. He explained that I was no longer with the firm. Marcus would be handling all future communications. The chairman did not respond. I signed the separation agreement Thursday afternoon. I needed the severance money, but I did not sign the document they sent. I modified 3 clauses. I removed the non-compete. I limited the confidentiality clause to exclude information already publicly available. I restricted the non-disparagement clause to exclude truthful statements. Then I sent it back with a note saying these were my terms. Take it or leave it. Sarah from Human Resources called me within an hour. She was furious. She said I could not modify the agreement. I said I just did. She said they would not accept my changes. I said that was fine. I would see them in employment tribunal. She hung up. 30 minutes later, Oliver called. His voice was tight with rage. He said I was making a serious mistake. I said I had already made my mistake by trusting his firm. I hung up on him. That night, the Ashford Industries chairman called my mobile directly. He said he had been thinking about the transaction. He was concerned about the leadership change so close to signing. He wanted to understand what had happened. I was careful. I explained that I was no longer with Hartwell Capital, but that Marcus was fully briefed on the deal. The chairman was quiet for a moment. Then he said Marcus had sent him emails that day with basic errors. He did not inspire confidence. He asked if I would be available to consult on the transaction independently. I said I would consider it. Friday morning, I received a revised separation agreement. They had accepted all my changes. The severance payment would be transferred within 5 business days. I signed it and sent it back. At 11:47 p.m. that night, exactly 48 hours after Oliver fired me, I received an email from the Ashford Industries chairman. The deal was being postponed. The German board wanted to review the transaction team before proceeding. Signing was delayed indefinitely. I forwarded the email to Oliver without comment. Then I turned off my phone and went to sleep. The collapse happened faster than I expected. Saturday morning, Marcus called me 17 times. I did not answer. He left voicemails begging me to call the German chairman. He said the deal was in trouble. He said Oliver was furious. He said I needed to help save the transaction. I deleted the messages without listening to them fully. Sunday afternoon, the Ashford Industries chairman called me again. He was direct. He said his board had lost confidence in Hartwell Capital's ability to manage the transaction. The leadership change had raised concerns about organizational stability. There were questions about whether the deal had been properly structured. He wanted me to review everything independently. He would pay me as a consultant, £50,000 for 2 weeks of work. I agreed. Monday morning, I started reviewing the transaction documents. I found problems immediately. Marcus had made changes to the agreements without understanding the implications. He had accepted terms that substantially increased Hartwell Capital's risk exposure. He had agreed to guarantee provisions that could cost the firm millions if the deal went badly. He had essentially destroyed months of careful negotiation because he did not understand what he was doing. I documented everything, every error, every increased risk, every poor decision Marcus had made in the 5 days since I left. Then I prepared a 20-page report for the Ashford chairman. The conclusion was clear. The transaction as currently structured was no longer advisable. The German company should either renegotiate completely or walk away. The chairman received my report on Wednesday morning. He called me 3 hours later. He said his board had voted to terminate discussions with Hartwell Capital. They would seek a different financial partner. He thanked me for my integrity and honesty. Then he said something unexpected. His company was considering other acquisitions in the UK market. They needed someone who understood British companies and German business culture, someone with technical expertise and strong ethics. Would I be interested in working directly for them? I said yes before he finished asking. We agreed on terms that afternoon. 6-month consulting contract, £20,000 per month. Potential for permanent position if things went well. I would start the following Monday. I hung up and sat in silence for 10 minutes. Then I called Daniel. He screamed with joy when I told him. Thursday morning, the financial press reported that Hartwell Capital had lost the Ashford Industries transaction. The articles noted that a major deal team restructuring had preceded the collapse. Several reporters called me for comment. I declined politely. I did not need to say anything. The facts spoke for themselves. Oliver called me Thursday evening. His voice was shaking with rage. He accused me of sabotaging the deal deliberately. He said I had destroyed the firm's reputation out of spite. He said he would sue me for breach of contract. I listened in silence. When he finished, I asked if he had read the separation agreement he signed. The one that removed the non-compete clause. The one that allowed me to work anywhere I wanted. He hung up without responding. Friday afternoon, Marcus sent me a long email. It was part apology, part justification, part plea for help. He admitted he had been out of his depth. He said Oliver had pressured him to take over the deal. He said he never meant for things to fall apart. He begged me to call the German chairman and repair the relationship. I did not reply. The following week, I started working for Ashford Industries. They gave me an office in their London facility in Canary Wharf. My job was identifying and evaluating UK acquisition targets. I was good at it. Very good. Within 3 months, I had found 2 potential transactions. By December, we had closed 1 deal worth £45 million. My success fee was £200,000, more than I would have made at Hartwell Capital. The damage to Oliver's firm was severe. 2 partners left to join competitors. 3 major clients moved their business elsewhere. The failure of the Ashford deal became a case study in poor management and organizational instability. Oliver tried to blame me publicly. That was a mistake. Several journalists investigated and discovered the truth. Articles appeared describing how a talented dealmaker had been fired due to prejudice and replaced with an incompetent executive. The firm's reputation never recovered. Marcus was let go in October. I heard through former colleagues that he was working at a much smaller firm for half his previous salary. Oliver remained as president, but the business was shrinking. Several people told me the firm would probably be sold within 2 years. I felt no satisfaction in their failure, just a quiet sense of justice. Daniel and I moved in together in November. We found a flat in Hackney with large windows and exposed brick walls. It felt like starting over, like building something real for the first time. He never said, "I told you so." He just supported me through everything. I realized I had almost destroyed the best thing in my life for a career that saw me as disposable. By the following spring, Ashford Industries offered me a permanent position as Director of UK Acquisitions. The salary was substantial. The bonus structure was generous. More importantly, the company culture was completely different. My personal life was irrelevant. Nobody cared who I dated or how I dressed or whether I played sports. They cared about results. I delivered results. 2 years later, I was promoted to vice president. I was leading transactions worth hundreds of millions of pounds. I had built a team of 8 people who respected me for my skills, not despite my identity. I was successful in ways I had never imagined possible when Oliver fired me that Wednesday morning. The final piece of justice came unexpectedly. In my 3rd year at Ashford Industries, I was invited to speak at a private equity conference in Frankfurt. The topic was cross-border transactions and cultural adaptation. After my presentation, a senior partner from one of London's largest firms approached me. He said his company was looking for experienced deal makers. He offered me a position as managing director with full equity partnership. The compensation was extraordinary. I accepted. Within 6 months, I had moved to the new firm and was leading their European expansion. I was building exactly the career I had wanted, but on my terms, without hiding, without apologizing, without sacrificing who I was for someone else's comfort. I never spoke to Oliver again. I never spoke to Marcus. I did not need to. They had tried to erase me and instead erased themselves. Sometimes the best revenge is simply being successful while your enemies destroy themselves through their own prejudice and incompetence. I think about that Wednesday morning often. The moment Oliver fired me 48 hours before my bonus. The moment I thought my career was over. It was the worst day of my professional life. It was also the beginning of something better. The prejudice I faced was real. The betrayal was painful. The injustice was profound. But I learned something important. Your value is not determined by people who refuse to see it. Your worth is not diminished by those who try to erase you. Your talent will find recognition if you refuse to give up. I wasted 3 years trying to fit into a culture that would never accept me. I changed my behavior. I hid my identity. I sacrificed my relationship. None of it mattered. They were always going to see me as less than. The problem was never my competence. It was their prejudice. Walking away was terrifying. Losing that bonus felt like losing everything. But staying would have cost me more. It would have cost me my dignity, my integrity, my sense of self. No amount of money is worth that price. If you're facing similar situations, remember this. The organizations and people who reject you are revealing their limitations, not yours. Their prejudice is their weakness. Your authenticity is your strength. Do not waste years trying to convince people of your value when they have already decided not to see it. Build something better. Find places that recognize your talent. Surround yourself with people who support who you are, not who they want you to be. Success is the best response to prejudice, not because you need to prove anything to them, but because you deserve to build the life and career. That Wednesday morning, Oliver thought he was destroying me. Instead, he freed me. 2 days later, when his deal collapsed, he learned an expensive lesson. You cannot erase people who have built something real. You cannot replace competence with prejudice. And you cannot succeed by surrounding yourself with people who tell you what you want to hear instead of what you need to know. I am grateful now. Not for the pain, but for the clarity it gave me. For the opportunity to rebuild on my own terms. For the chance to prove that success and authenticity are not mutually exclusive. If my story inspired you, if you have ever felt diminished or know someone who has, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, we share real stories of overcoming and resistance. And if you have your own story of triumph against prejudice, share it in the comments. Your experience can inspire someone going through a similar situation. Remember, your value is not defined by others' prejudice. Your talent is greater than any barrier they try to put in your way. And sometimes the best revenge is simply being who you are without apologizing. See you in the next story, which will be even more impactful.